HuckFit22. Who should subscribe? Yeah, that's you.
Hey, it's Huck. And if you're not one of the millions of HBO subscribers addicted like strung out heroin addicts to the series Game of Thrones, then you're probably wondering just what the fuck is going on today as you watch a seemingly random parade of your fellow coworkers, students, neighbors, and strangers acting noticeably, even dangerously odd today. There are reports of streets all over the globe Sunday night littered with the smashed remnants of televisions thrown from apartment high-rises and ground-level living room picture windows. And on Monday, those typically bubbly, chatty friends of yours are walking around like zombies, staring off into space and whispering expletives to no one in particular. I don't have the numbers yet, but I'm guessing there's a prominent premium cable channel that may be in the midst of the most stunning overnight transition in television history. Record 1-hour broadcast ratings Sunday night, and unprecedented, even mind-boggling numbers of unsubscribers one day later. And if you're a fellow by the name of George R.R. Martin, author of the books this Game of Thrones series is based upon, you're probably petitioning the federal government at this very hour for membership in the Witness Protection Program, and doing so from a safe, undisclosed location known only to Dick Cheney. Somehow, the image of author George Martin keeping company today with Dick Cheney, desperately holed up together in some isolated hideout far from all known civilization, seems fitting to me, as I can think of no other two human beings on the planet right now likely more mistrusted or reviled than these two. Now, we all know the sins of Dick Cheney, but for those of you out there who have never watched Game of Thrones and never read the 5 books George Martin wrote on which this series is based, well, you cannot possibly imagine the pain and grief Martin and the series upon which these books are based inflicted on millions of folks around the world Sunday night. And let me tell you, some of these folks are not just upset, they're fucking pissed. The creators of this series couldn't have pissed off more people if they had personally driven up the driveways of every single viewer and run over each and every one of their family dogs. What unfolded last night on Game of Thrones was something so profoundly disturbing, so heart-wrenching and macabre, and so unlike anything ever broadcast on television, that literally millions of folks who for 29 episodes and 3 seasons into their favorite television series of all time are not just vowing to boycott the show, not merely canceling their HBO subscription, but are exhibiting behaviors previously seen only in those suffering debilitating clinical depression. I wouldn't be surprised if within the next 24 hours, authorities didn't feel the need to close access to all bridges and high-rise buildings around the globe for at least the next several days to ward off mass suicide. Now, throughout this series, time and time again, viewers should have been primed to understand that in Game of Thrones land, being good and decent, innocent and caring, gets you in a whole lot of trouble and may get you killed. If you strive to live a life of honor and risk your life to do the right thing, like the series' first hero, Ned Stark, you're almost certainly fated to die. And not a hero's death in a glorious battle defending your honor, but in some nasty, irreverent, and generally unforeseen manner that takes you by surprise. When Ned Stark was beheaded near the end of season 1, viewers who, like me, had not read the book in advance were led to believe that Ned would be saved from the headsman, and when he swallowed his pride to admit to a lie he never made in the first place in order to save his family, we allowed ourselves to be fooled that life wasn't as unfair and despicable in Games of Thrones world as it is in our own. No, we thought Ned Stark would be exiled to the Wall to do hard but honorable service and to live out his days alive with his honor intact. But that's not what George Martin wrote for the part of Ned Stark. No, in the blink of an eye, Stark's head was severed and placed on a pike for all the viewing world to see. And then, to add insult to injury, Martin had to write that bit about the evil little King Joffrey, forcing Ned Stark's daughter Sansa to get up close and personal with her father's head, so he could gloat about what a heartless little gold-crowned spawn of Satan Joffrey truly is. And so, it really should have come as no surprise that the author, at this still relatively early stage in the Game of Thrones series, near the end of Season 3, midway through Martin's third of a planned 7 books total, that he would wreak havoc on 2 or 3 of his audience's best-loved characters. And not just wreak havoc, but brutally, unashamedly, kill them off like caged Bambis at a petting zoo. And it was that malicious thought of this very episode, of nurturing over 3 seasons and 28 previous episodes, this love affair between the viewing audience and the young, brave, rapidly maturing Robb Stark and his strong, determined, black cloud-immersed mother, Catelyn Stark. Only after that bond between these 2 characters and the audience had reached its zenith of pulling out the rug, leaving the audience shattered like a cheap glass of cheap wine in a cheap speakeasy tavern. It was the thought of this unspeakably horrific moment for viewers which first struck the fancy of Game of Thrones producers to want desperately to create this series. That's right, they've admitted as much, because I guess never before has a television series taken such pains to elaborately, lovingly caress such major characters over so long a time, only to butcher them like Tyson meat at a slaughterhouse. And that ought to give the rest of us Game of Thrones fans who remain a little something to think about. I mean, who's left that the audience has followed with the same affection and love as Catelyn Stark? If I had to venture a guess, I'd say it'd be Arya Stark. And for some, maybe the other sister, Sansa Stark. Well, like many others out there, I've tried to stay a few steps behind in the book to allow myself to be caught up and surprised with each new episode on TV. But based on my reading, now roughly a quarter of the way through Book 3, I am confident I have discovered the series' big secret, and the one character, or is it 2, that seem to have pretty good odds of surviving the bloodlust of author George Martin's pen. And his name is not Stark, if you get my drift. The secret of the series lies in the paternity and maternity of this character. I am convinced of it, but the author has cleverly thrown more hurdles in this character's path than Hodor rants in a thunderstorm. So I'm going to keep watching to see how the bastard ultimately wins out, if that's his fate. As for the rest of you, consider this series training for real life. Why should every good guy and good girl always triumph on the screen, when it never occurs in real life? Whoever said good guys finish last was only half correct. He should have added, or die first. I don't know. There seem to be a lot of evil old weasels gumming up the works everywhere from Washington to Wall Street. And who knows where else. But it seems to me it's been an awful long time anybody really stepped up to do much about it. I mean, it does beg the question, have we arrived at a point in our civilization where we are so accepting of the fact that the world is so fucked up around us and we are so powerless to do anything against the evil forces that have mounted this sad reality upon us, that we now save our outrage and despair for those times when our one escape from reality, television, lets us down? You tell me. Anyway, I'm Huck. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.
Huck Fit 22. Who should subscribe? Yeah, that's you.